Brought to you by Charity Mobile. Switch to the phone company that supports your beliefs. All plans start under $50 before taxes and surcharges. Use promo code TRADITION at CharityMobile.com for a special offer. Yesterday, a story broke from the Vatican that caused quite the stir in Catholic online discussion groups. The Vatican announced a new votive mass setting that would be published on this coming Thursday, the day after tomorrow from the time of this broadcast. That votive mass setting would be for care for our common home, aka for that Laudato Si issue, or as we have to call it on pretty much every social media platform due to the censorship policies of all the hosts, the thermometer problem. 2025 is the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si, Pope Francis's encyclical on care for our common home, as he called it. It's odd to celebrate the anniversary of papal encyclicals. The only one I can think of that gets anniversary celebrations by Rome is the great social encyclical of Pope Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, which kicked off the Catholic social teaching tradition. Its anniversaries were celebrated in the encyclical Quadragesimo Anno, which is an incredible encyclical on economics, politics, and what the Catholic response to the questions of the day should be, as well as an anniversary encyclical on that subject published by Pope Paul VI and later by John Paul II. But we have, with Laudato Si, something interesting because in 2015 it was published and it was marketed as being in the same tradition as those encyclicals and is clearly meant to have the same impact, given that it has its own anniversary celebrations. Now let's do two things first. Let's talk about this votive mass setting as dispassionately as possible, given that the concrete details will not be released until Thursday, which means Friday we'll get more coverage on this channel. But so let's try to avoid too much emotional being in anger, because frankly, Laudato Si has been, I think, rightly accused of crossing the line between having respect for God's creation and crossing into the territory of secular neo-paganism. But given all of that, let's look at the facts as they are, as well as acknowledging some concerns people have. But also, first, let's take a look at what a votive mass is, because this new mass variant is a votive mass. So the USCCB gives us, I think, what will be a actual good working definition here. This comes from their page, Masses and Prayers for Various Needs and Occasions. It begins here with a scriptural quote. He is always able to save those who approach God through him, since he lives forever to make intercession for them. See the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 7, verse 25. This reminds us that Mass intentions are supposed to be about the salvation of souls. Keep that in mind when we talk about this votive Mass and care for our common home and all that stuff. The sacrifice of the Mass makes present to the faithful Christ's eternal act of intercession for us. In that sense, the Mass is the Church's greatest intercessory prayer. This is why over the centuries, the Church has provided for her children Mass formulas for various needs and occasions, as the current Roman Missal calls them. These are Masses that make specific intercession for particular concerns of the time. We're going to skip past a bunch of these other ones, and we're going to go down to here for votive Masses. Whereas the Masses and prayers for various needs and occasions respond to the concerns and demands that weigh on the Christian in the world, votive Masses respond to the devotional desires and preferences. These Masses highlight 19 central aspects of the faith and are intended to foster the devotion of the faithful towards these central mysteries, which include the Trinity, the mercy of God, Christ, the cross, the Eucharist, the Holy Spirit, Mary, the angels, and the saints. These Masses may be used under the same circumstances as those for various needs, though they are not so connected to the Eucharistic prayers of that title. Now that's the USCCB telling us what a votive Mass is. So we're going to have a votive Mass for the care of our common home, for custody of creation. And this is, remember, a votive Mass is supposed to foster devotion of the faithful towards the central mysteries. Is this going to be elevated because it's a votive Mass? Is creation, custody of our so-called common home, going to be considered a mystery of the faith, including the Trinity, the mercy of God, Christ, the cross, the Eucharist, the Holy Spirit, Mary, the angels and saints? If that is what they're doing, that is a gigantic problem and should be taken with the absolute most seriousness that we as Catholics can have. Now, I'm going to address a super chat here from Barbara. Appreciate the super chat. Why is the church doing everything I thought they should do when I was 15 years old in 1967? I outgrew it, but they didn't. Well, that's because we are in a time when the hierarchy of the church wants to continue making the church relevant to the modern world. And in their own mind, relevant to the modern world is around the 1960s to the late 1970s in terms of the things they go after. Weird. That's one of the reasons why, as I've never hidden that I'm getting increasingly concerned about this pontificate because of the signs coming from it. But I'm not going to deny that AI is very much a modern concern. And Pope Leo going to write an encyclical on that is something that I want to see what he has to say, because it is clearly a modern concern. Let me give you an example of this, not to deviate too much from our main topic here, but my Facebook feed now is filled with people sharing AI images and not being able to tell that they're AI, even though I can see they're clearly AI, or links to YouTube channels that are making up speeches by Bishop Robert Barron or the Pope or others that are AI voices reading AI scripted speeches that were never ever given. I feel like I spend every time I go onto Facebook now replying to people posting this stuff saying this is AI, this is fake. AI is a real problem. And there's something ironic about the Pope about to release an encyclical on AI, the social question of the day in terms of economics and technology and the rest, while he himself being the victim of people pushing AI. So that would be an actual contemporary issue. But most of the things that you see here in our time appear to be them just playing along with the secular world with their concerns from 60 years ago. But now let's get back to the topic. We are clear on what a votive mass is. So let's take a look at the story as it developed yesterday. Catholics broke the story as far as I can tell. And so we go here to them. The headline, well, not really, headlines on X. Vatican announces the publication of a new votive mass for the care of creation, Missa pro custodia creationis, which will be added to the Missae pro variis necessitibus vel ad diversa of the Roman Missal. Meaning it's a mass, it is a votive mass for custody of creation, and that's going to be added to the Roman Missal section on masses for various necessities and needs, and the votive mass is a subsection of that, as I just showed you from the USCCB website. Now, there's a figure on here who I find very strange in all of this, and really in everything going on in kind of online commentary. And it's a man named Rich Reho, who I agree with almost nothing he says. He is clearly a big fan of Francis and everything he did. He's a Catholic high school teacher, and he supports Francis's project of making a new religion. But he has some very strangely accurate connections in the Roman Curia who give him information that always turns out to be accurate. And he gave us this, he kind of helped support the story before the actual Catholic media began reporting on this. So here he goes. New, the Vatican announces that on Thursday, July 3rd, the Mass for the Care of Creation will be released and added to the Roman Missal under masses for various needs. Cardinal Jesuit Czerny will lead the press conference. And then there's the details. It'll be at 10 a.m., which means it'll be happening. It could happen before I go live Thursday. So we'll find out. If that's the case, I will try to have something ready for Thursday instead of on the 4th of July. The speakers will be Cardinal Michael Czerny, a Jesuit, prefect for the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, a dicastery that in my mind should not exist, and Archbishop Vittorio Francesco Viola, secretary for the Dicastery for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments. This is Cardinal Arthur Roach's assistant, basically. The press conference will be live streamed in the original language, meaning probably Italian, on the Vatican News YouTube channel. So he broke that story, and then he gives us more information. And so we go to him. He says, regarding the new Mass for Care of Creation, a Vatican source says the Mass had been in the works for some time and was designated to mark the 10th anniversary of Francis's landmark encyclical, Eco-encyclical, Laudato Si. Pope Leo signed off on the new Mass at a June 3rd audience with Cardinal Roach. I'm going to leave this on screen here while we talk about this, because A lot of people have actually defended this, saying, well, this was in the works from Pope Francis, so Leo's not responsible. Leo signed off on it. He had the ability to quietly cancel this without making any waves, maybe a few whispers online. He could have canceled this. He chose not to. So when you do something like that, you do take ownership of it. It's a very basic leadership trait. And we should respect Pope Leo enough to give him credit where it's due, and even on things that we generally don't like. We should not play mental gymnastics games one way or the other. He had a meeting with Cardinal Roach, according to someone who's always right about these things for some reason, and signed off on it. Project started under Francis. Leo reviewed it on June 3rd, approved it, and he could have canceled it. And I'll go over why he didn't cancel it here in a minute, but let's go to LifeSite for more details on the story. So LifeSite News, of course, went and published their article yesterday because they also have sources in Rome. And so I would take this seriously. Under the headline, Vatican announces new votive mass for the care of creation. The new text of the mass will be issued Thursday and comes on the back of Pope Francis's special focus on the thermometer problem issues. That's to say, call it a focus on that, as to put it mildly. Okay. Francis practically put the church at the service of the secular world on this. It's their big lie. And he'll use the church to promote the big lie of our time. Seems that every age really has a big lie of some kind. This is the one for now. Vatican is set to publish a new mass text called the Mass for the Care of Creation. In a press note issued June 30th, the Holy See press office announced details of a press conference on Thursday, which will be the launch pad for a new mass. There will be a press conference to present the new form of the mass, Pro Custodia Creationis, be added to the Missal Pro Vetis Necessitatis Val Adi Diversa, the Roman Missal, note reads. The mass is believed to be joining the list of votive masses in the Roman Missal. Presenting the new mass text will be two notable Vatican officials, which we went over. At the moment, it is not yet known how long the mass has been in preparation, though it is likely to have been originated under the pontificate of Pope Francis. According to Rich Rejo, that's exactly what happened. It will be of key significance to examine the text upon its release, given another high-profile liturgical case that is currently underway, namely the 3-year experimental phase of the Amazon Rite, which seeks to draw from local Amazonian customs. Alongside this is the pagan-linked enculturated Mayan Rite, which the Vatican is currently considering for the indigenous enculturation of the people in Mexico. These are both mass forms, the Amazon Rite and the Mayan Rite, that are heavily influenced by pagan culture. Something that would never have been allowed before Francis, probably. Definitely not before Vatican II. And so this is continuing to push the boundaries. And so the key question is, will this be in line with those things? Or will this be in line with more traditional Catholic understandings of our role with creation? Where the Mayan and Amazon Rite differ to the expected Mass for the Care of Creation is that the former have been posited as enculturated rites, while the latter is understood to be more akin to a votive Mass. And akin to a votive Mass is one way to put it. But care for our common home, as Francis called it, became a focus of his pontificate. He became a champion for the big lie the secular authorities keep pushing on us, despite there being actually no evidence that it's actually true. Francis put the church at the service of the world for their pet cause, hosted various UN conferences for that and related issues at the Vatican, and took on various initiatives using the Vatican and church resources to help promote the big lie. The article goes into how the church was co-opted for all of this. So let's go back to this because, again, this is something that one of the things that we need to be watching for, if you really want to know what Leo's pontificate will look like, is does he continue to put the church to the service of the big lie or not? And the signs aren't positive for that. Francis made the care of creation a prominent theme throughout his pontificate, dedicating numerous speeches and addresses to it. His 2015 encyclical letter Laudato Si became the reference text for a number of Vatican and papal initiatives focused on the so-called program for the color green. In it, Francis spoke about a true ecological approach, which listens to both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. The earth doesn't cry. You can't anthropomorphize the planet. The document later gave rise to the Laudato Si movement, which aims to, quote, turn Pope Francis's encyclical letter Laudato Si into action for the thermometer problem and ecological justice. That's a Marxist phrase, by the way. As the mass getting rid of your funding from fossil fuels finds inspiration in the late pontiff's environmental writings. In October 2023, Francis published a second part to Laudato Si in the form of an apostolic exhortation named Laudate Deum. The late Pope also made numerous calls to action for global leaders to implement the pro-sacrifice to Moloch agreement that was signed in Paris, citing the, quote, negative effects of the thermometer problem and an ecological debt, which required financing for the thermometer problem, removal of carbon in the economic system and in people's lives. And it goes on like that. This would, of course, put the church as a partner in creation of this new order of the ages that they seek to make. Some of us objected to this. And now the great question is, when we get this votive mass setting, will it be more building on that or not? How will Pope Leo continue this? The signs aren't great, to be honest. He has approvingly and lovingly cited Laudato Si numerous times already. The ideology underscoring that document is influenced by Marxism heavily. One can argue that it's an attempt to address the concerns of liberation theology. I've seen people in good faith making that argument. And to address the concerns, Marxists who use Laudato Si issue as their focus, that the entire issue. There's a whole branch of them that do that, very common in South America, by the way. Others, though, say it's an attempt to impose their ideology on the church by whitewashing it to make it look Catholic. Leo has a track record in the past 2 months on this issue that I don't think is particularly great. We're going to go here to the National Catholic Reporter, who practically do cartwheels every time he does something, which is kind of concerning, honestly. We go here with their headline, "What role will Pope Leo XIV play in the future of Laudato Si ecological action?" This was published like 2 weeks ago. Okay, so this is, again, not a new issue. We're going to go down here. They're giving you a lot of stuff about Laudato Si and all the stuff it's fueled. All of it, the movements that they fueled, no mention of the gospel. One of the criticisms you see of the post-conciliar era is that there has been a much more activist bent from Rome in their messaging to Catholics. A make a better world kind of messaging. Truly, if you want to make a better world, you're not going to do it through misuse of the corporal works of mercy. Yes, go do the corporal works of mercy. Go feed the poor, help the sick, all the things our Lord commanded us to do. I'm not questioning that, nor should you. But none of that is a replacement for the gospel. The ultimate purpose of the church is the salvation of souls. Everything the church does should be oriented toward that. And all the Laudato Si stuff isn't about that. I mean, it's telling that most of the pictures accompanying this reporting, whether from hostile sources, neutral sources, or those very, very friendly to the late Pope Francis's agenda, all involve tree planting ceremonies. Weird how that works out. But after you go down to this very long, hagiography, practically, of all the wonderful things in the eyes of National Catholic Reporter that have been done in the name of Laudato Si, you finally get this part that bury the lead. Quote, "What role the new Pope may play is still unfolding. Gold, one of the people that they talk about here, was among the Laudato Si movement leaders who met with Pope Leo XIV in St. Peter's Square. She called it a great encounter that left her hopeful he will build upon the environmental foundation Francis left. In his still early papacy, Leo has referenced Laudato Si on several occasions. It had an extraordinary impact, inspiring countless initiatives and teaching everyone to listen to the twofold cry of the earth and of the poor, Pope Leo said on May 25th and marking the 10-year anniversary. Earlier in May, he encouraged participants at a Rio de Janeiro ecological gathering of 200 Catholic universities and organizations across 3 continents, quote, to be builders of bridges of integration between the Americas and the Iberian Peninsula, working for ecological, social, and environmental justice. This week, he instructed the bishops of Madagascar to make care for creation an integral part of your prophetic mission. How one pope carries on the emphases and unfinished work of his predecessors, not a new question in the long history of the Roman Catholic Church." And it goes on to talk about some examples of how other popes did those things. Make it part of your prophetic mission. The prophetic mission of the bishops is the salvation of souls, bringing souls to Christ. And I've never seen a good answer for what that has to do with care for our common home. Never seen a good one. And I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the church's answer to this, and I had to get it past my committee, chaired by essentially a liberation theologian, make it extremely pro-Francis's program, and I still couldn't come up with what this had to do with the salvation of souls. So, it's a mystery. Now, John Henry Weston posted something about all of this on X, and he's not wrong in his assessment here. He says, this will be an important indication of where Pope Leo is coming from. While there can be a legit mass praying for the care of creation, in our current environment, it is suspect, and that is putting it mildly. It is absolutely suspect in the current sort of tone and tenor of things in the broader world. How this topic is handled by Leo will be one of the unmistakable signs of whether he is really Francis II, as some claim that he is, or whether he is a more moderate alternative. Leo has said repeatedly he is continuing Francis's reforms and continuing to build on his legacy. I could do an entire live stream if I wanted to just go after him directly, just quoting him directly on this. But I won't. At least not for now. He said all of that, though, from the loggia when he was introduced to the world. He said that in numerous addresses since then. The concern many have on this can be kind of summed up here by Deacon Nick Donnelly, who I don't think you could ever accuse of being just someone who goes on unhinged rants about the new Pope. He's on Pope Leo, he's not a firebrand. Here's what he had to say. Notice he has a heartbreak emoji there. Vatican announces new formula of a mass for the care of creation. After the Pachamama idolatry scandal, this shouldn't have been touched with a barge pole. Political ideology should have no place in the most holy sacrifice of the Mass. How about instead a vote of Mass in reparation for promoting the sacrifice to Moloch, tainted 2020 solution to that huge lie, or a vote of Mass in reparation for the hundreds of thousands of the most young and young adults harmed by evil priests and hidden away by bishops, or a vote of Mass in reparation for recent heresies that have misled and confused the faithful, leading some to be in danger of eternal perdition. But we can't have that, because the thing that's gone out of vogue in the post-conciliar church is all talk of the four last things. We get popes who openly talk about how they hope hell is empty. Why would you hope that? Honestly, it's perfectly fine that you hope particular people, even great public sinners in their final private moments, repented and had made a good confession or made a perfect act of contrition and all the rest of the things. Totally fine. Salvation of souls is the first thing, but let's not disrespect the justice of God either. We must take it seriously. Otherwise, we run the real danger in our own lives of not taking it seriously for us and for our loved ones. So let's not downplay the justice of God. Now compare that, though, to Deacon Nick Donnelly's comment to one just from a random everyday Catholic. It's a more moderate take, but still, it's not exactly positive, because I don't know how you view this coming Mass votive thing as a positive thing. It is not wicked, this idea, but it is for a clique and a clique view. And this is embarrassingly obvious. We manifestly don't have custody in any real sense of creation as such, or the vast, vast, vast universe. We have responsibility for the planet on which we live in a rather general sense. That is a much more sensical take than the stuff we hear from Rome. But that's because the powers that be in Rome have bought into the big lie. The bigger the lie, for some reason, the more people want to believe it. Even though when you look at the polling data, at least in America, a lot of people don't really buy into it. You go other places and they do. But, the authorities, when they implement the big lie, they use it to implement the most evil programs. And their long-term goals are absolutely unchristian. Stuff of Antichrist, honestly. With the announcement of the Laudato Si vote of Mass by the Vatican, we can see how this thinking of focusing on care for our common home that is weirdly missing the gospel message has infected the church and its thinking. The gospel is about salvation of souls, the four last things, getting to heaven. And for whatever reason, we meaning the authorities in the church, not you and I, have replaced it with a vision of making a better world. It's a profound mistake that has very real consequences for all too many people. It's an elevation of worldly concerns that are often tied to the corporal works of mercy. And again, we should never dismiss the corporal works of mercy. The church should absolutely focus on the corporal works of mercy. But traditionally, the focus on the corporal works of mercy was to ensure that material deprivation or the evil deeds of evil rulers didn't prevent people from getting to heaven, that they didn't serve as a stumbling block to their salvation. That was the main thing. Plus, Jesus said it just plainly told us to help the poor. How we deal with the poor is how we deal with him, essentially. But he also told us, you will always have the poor with you. And he said that in relation to Judas complaining about all the fineries being, all the resources being used for expensive oils that were being applied to our Lord. You will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me with you, to paraphrase that part of the gospel. And the point of it is, yes, help the poor, but don't lose sight of right worship. Don't lose sight of Christ in all of this, in our relationship to Christ, which has to be right ordered. And they've supplanted a lot of this with creating a better world for purely material purposes. And it's right in all their language for this. And the ultimate form this takes is to let sacred spaces in the church be taken over for what some have criticized as having neo-pagan purposes, such as, I think it was this year or last year, when St. Peter's Basilica was used on Earth Day to have images of animals projected onto it with political slogans. That caused a lot of hard pushback from people, but they do something like this every year, right on that day. It's like one of the highest secular feast days, and they do it shamelessly. I have another example of this misuse of church property for what some are calling neo-pagan purposes here. So we go to Cathcon, the Catholic Conclave blog, which has done a lot of great reporting lately. Published on June 29th, nature allowed to invade Catholic Church in symbol of ecological modernism, destroying the faith. There's a picture of it. What does that have to do with the Mass? What is this? You don't use parishes from anything other, at least like, your chapel, all the parts of your parish that are used for the holy sacrifice of the Mass. You don't use them for secular purposes. Jesus tossed the money changers out of the temple, overturned tables, because they were using the temple for secular purposes. Here are the details of this. Quote, within the historic walls of Gdansk St. John's Church, you can feel like you're in a forest. A space has just opened there, designed for all those seeking peace, quiet, and contact with nature in the summer hustle and bustle of the city. From June 27th to July 5th, 2025, the Cultural Center on the Baltic Sea invites visitors to visit a unique art installation called Lisnia. It is a space that combines elements of art, ecology, and sensory experience. The project is a response to sensory overload and the need for a short break from the intense rhythm of urban life. At a time when the Tri-City attracts crowds of open-air festival participants, the St. John's Center becomes a place of alternative relaxation. Lesnia offers a space of tranquility where you can breathe deeply, listen to the sounds of nature, and immerse yourself in a forest-like atmosphere. It is not a typical exhibition, but rather an open, dynamic installation that changes with the visitors. You can sit, lie down, stroll among the trees, or linger for a while. Each visit here is intended to be a unique individual experience. The project was realized in a historically and aesthetically charged space. The Gothic architecture of the temple was juxtaposed with vegetation and natural materials, creating a scenography with great visual power. The interior of the temple has taken on a new dimension, and its monumentality is emphasized by the contrast with organic forms of the plants. This juxtaposition opens the field for new interpretations of architecture and the relationship between humans and nature. Let's pause there. That is a great way to describe the problem. The Mass is first and foremost a representation of the sacrifice our Lord made on Calvary. There's certainly an element in the Mass key to the liturgical debates, by the way, between the traditional Mass and the Novus Ordo about the relationship between God and man. And they just turned this parish into something that highlights the relationship between humans and nature. Begin to see the problem here. The experience of Lesnia engages all the senses. So does the Mass. The soundscape created by the artist evokes a state of tranquility, and the fragrant compositions of another artist complete the impression of the forest presence. The installation is enriched with performative and musical elements that appear in unexpected ways. This is all about artisticness and sustainability, the key values of the secular world. At the St. John's Center, which has been managed by Baltic Sea Cultural Center for 3 decades, artistic experiments and activities regularly take place that redefine its function. The function of a parish is to hold the holy sacrifice of the Mass and to make the sacraments available to the laity, including penance or reconciliation, if you prefer, and baptism, and of course the Eucharist and whatever else might be needed. That's its purpose. That's its function. Regularly take place that redefine its function. At least they're being honest with us here. That's what they're doing. Now, ecology is a big word. If you don't know what it means, if you're not a nerd about these kind of things, like I used to be when I wrote my doctoral dissertation, and honestly, it's one of the issues that when people ask you, Anthony, what radicalized you? What made you do an angry, meanie-headed trad? Well, it was this issue, and the churches will answer to it. But here's the definition of ecology. This comes from biologydictionary.net. Okay, this is one of those websites that dispassionately gives you all what the meaning of all the words all these people use. Here's their definition. Ecology is the branch of biology that studies how organisms interact with their environment and other organisms. Every organism experiences complex relationship with other organisms of its species and organisms of different species. These complex interactions lead to different selective pressures on organisms. The pressures together lead to natural selection, which causes populations of species to evolve. Ecology is the study of these forces, what produces them, and the complex relationship between organisms and each other, and organisms and their non-living environment. Scientists can view ecology through a variety of different lenses, from the microscopic molecular level all the way to the planet as a whole. These different types of ecology will be focused further on. We won't go into that today. At every level of ecology, the focus is on the selective pressures that cause evolutionary change. These pressures arise from a variety of different sources, and there are numerous methods for observing and quantifying this data. End quote. And that's right from the horse's mouth. Okay, this is what they're using that parish for. This is what Laudato Si was for, to bring the language of natural selection into the Catholic lexicon. Believe them when they tell you what they're doing. I frequently bring this up. Post-conciliar order, meaning everything from 1965 or so on to today, has been about a focus on man, his needs, and making a better world. And a lot of less and less emphasis on the gospel, and especially on this thermometer issue, virtually no mention of the gospel. They have supplanted worship of the Creator for the worship of the created. That's what they've done. Unintentionally. Or maybe intentionally. Depends on the person involved. And as I, cited another time, National Catholic Reporter asked a good question for once. What will Pope Leo's response to all this be? We shall see. But he has positively quoted the document for this numerous times. Curious what you think about all this, so let me know in the comments, please. I should cut the screen to edit out ads. I can't. I don't know what you mean, cut the screen. The ads are there, and our hosts do not like applications that try to prevent those advertisements from popping up. They block people from using their website entirely, and I can't risk that. So they're there. I don't know why people get so offended by that. Catherine Hickory says natural selection is a diabolical deception. Darwin married his cousin, I think. Yeah, that's generally true. It's generally worth reminding ourselves that at least on the preconciliar calendar, and this is making a comeback among conservatives who go to the ordinary form of the Mass as well, There were the rogation days. There were the ember days. There are ember days every season. The Catholic faith is tied naturally to the cycle of the seasons, which means the cycle of creation. But those days are all about fasting and penance. It is true. It is completely fine to be angered at people, disrespecting God and his artistry and his great gift of creation to all of us. It is perfectly right and just to do that. We certainly do owe great respect to God and the things the works of his hands. But that cannot take our eyes off creation, or off of rather the salvation of souls. We have to keep our eye on the prize. And this is why this issue cannot be overlooked. And it's why we will learn a great deal about the goals of this pontificate as it happens. I'm curious, though, what you think about all this. So let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. Not trying to whip you up in anger against anybody here. Pray for them instead. Pray that all the things we covered today will be, when the news rolls out about this stuff, and as this stuff continues to get implemented, it's done with the salvation of souls in mind and aligns with the will of God and not some secular ideological program of man. And if you've ever thought about supporting the work we do here at Return to Tradition, you can do so through the description box below. Patreon, Subscribe Star, all those things. They do help keep these daily messages coming. All those options, by the way, were asked for by viewers of the channel, so I gave them to them. It does help keep these daily messages coming. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.